Hello, welcome to Experiments in Poetry. This is episode 7, where we discuss the poet Rumi's work entitled Whoever Brought Me Here Will Have to Take Me Home. Rumi was born in the early 1200s in what is the region known as Afghanistan. At the time, it was the Persian Empire, so he throughout the course of his life, lived in areas that include Afghanistan, Iran, Turkmenistan. So he traveled all these areas as a religious scholar, philosopher, and poet. His philosophies and poetry have withstood the test of time to the point where he is the best-selling author still today in poetry in the United States of America. But not only is he loved in the States, he is also revered throughout the world, regardless of the specific religious group one is affiliated with. And I think this openness comes from the fact that at the center of all religions, there is probably one universal truth that we can all relate to. And also in his works, he does not name a specific god or god. In fact, his beliefs are quite open to the fact that God will reveal himself to you, and he refers to this as a truth without form. For form, it takes in whatever shape it takes is a personal relationship between you and the divine. So I'm going to read a quote from Coleman Barks in his work, The Essential Rumi, where he defines Rumi's poems as they are not discrete entities, but a fluid, continuously self-revising, self-interrupting medium. They are not so much about anything as spoken from within something. Call it enlightenment, ecstatic love, spirit, soul, truth, the ocean of ilm, or the covenant of alas. The names do not matter because there is some resonance of ocean that resides in everyone, and Rumi's poetry can be felt as a salt breeze from that while you're traveling inland. So what exactly were the beliefs of Rumi? Now, I don't tell you this to try to convince you of a specific religion or spiritual path. I just am curious about history and the thinking that went into the work, and that sort of thing just fascinates me. I think that a person's spirituality is their own making and doing, and you are free to believe whatever is. Mulana Jalal ad-Din Muhammad Baqi Rumi, and we'll just refer to him, or he is just known as Rumi. And he was a Muslim, and so he followed the beliefs of the Quran, or the beliefs outlined in the Quran. But he was from a certain sect of the Islam faith called the Sufi Muslims. And this was a kind of mystical arm of the Muslim religion that so mystics believe in the mystery of divine nature, and that the true nature of ourselves is hidden from us, And so that the point of your religious practice would be for you to unveil that knowledge and bring it into your consciousness. And you do that by prayer, meditation, and dance, etc. So Rumi was an intellectual. He was a scholar of theology who traveled the Persian Empire learning about religion. And then one day he came across a whirling dervish, a roaming whirling dervish. Now, if you looked at the start of the poetry video and also the start of this video, you see men dressed in traditional attire, and they're spinning, and they're spinning, which is a kind of ritual spiritual dance where they're simulating the motions of the planets in the motion of the universe and cosmos to become closer with the divine. It is not only a dance, but when one looks at them, they have one hand stretched out towards the heavens with their palm open to the heavens, and then they have another hand, or the other hand, angled down towards the ground, and then they spin. And to me, when I look at this, it's kind of like they're kind of bringing the energy from the heavens and bringing that knowledge down into the body of the earth. So one day, Rumi came across one of these whirling dervishes that had forever impacted his religious life and practice. So at one point, Rumi was just studying, and trying to get to know God through reading and obtaining knowledge of him through stories of other people's relationships and interactions with God. And so when he came across this whirling dervish, and his name was, and he's often referred to as Shams Tabis, or just simply Shams. And in Rumi's writings, he refers to Shams often, and what his relationship with Shams meant to him. So Shams, basically, there's many stories of how, but Shams basically took all of Rumi's books and destroyed them. And in some stories, he threw them in a fountain, and in other stories, Shams burned his books. But Shams kind of wanted to shock Rumi out of just being intellectual and in his mind and thinking, and showed him basically how to become a whirling dervish. And in that he didn't have to read about other people's experiences with the divine, that through music and prayer and meditation and dance, that he can commune and experience the divine himself. So basically, to take what he has learned in the books and actually make it into his reality. One of the reasons why I'm telling you this story is because the poem that I'm going to talk about today, Whoever Brought Me Here Will Have to Take Me Home, was actually written when Rumi was in a trance, performing a whirling dervish dance. So what would happen is Rumi would go into these ritualistic whirling dervish dance, and when he was in a trance-like state, he would start reciting just whatever flowed through him in that moment, and he had scribes that would follow him and record what he is saying. So this is one fragment of the type of thing that Rumi was consciously streaming when he was in this state. So the first verse starts off with, all day I think about it, then at night I say it. Why am I unaware of the state of my heart? Where did I come from? And what am I supposed to be doing? Where am I going? You did not show me my home. I have no idea. I ask myself, why did he make me? Or what was the intention of making me? My soul is from elsewhere. I'm sure of that, and I intend to end up there. So at this point, it seems to be very straightforward, but actually, it's much deeper in meaning than that. Because it's not just a man questioning, who am I, where I come from, what am I supposed to be doing? Although I feel like these are questions that many of us will come to in our lifetime, I feel that the overall message of what he's getting at here is that this is the veiled part of one's vision. That you're thinking of yourself as an I and a me. And you're searching for something because you know that something is missing. And he gets to it at the end of it. My soul is from elsewhere, and I am sure of that, and I intend to wind up there. So I want to go back and kind of get into his philosophical and religious thinkings, which again I think are pretty universal because many people from many shamanistic or even Western or Eastern religious philosophies relate to it. So at the core of Rumi's teachings is that to be human is to be at the place where the two seas meet. And so this is kind of esoteric, but I feel like if we can somehow understand what this is, then it can open our minds into what he's thinking in this trance-like state. So in the Quran, there's a story of Moses who meets a character called Qadir. The Qadir is also known as the Green Man, which is the embodiment of divine wisdom. So Qadir tells Moses, I will not cease until I reach the two seas where the dead fish become alive. And I already had stated that for Rumi, at the center of it all, humans must be a place where the two seas meet. And where are those two seas meeting? At the place where the dead fish become alive. So when Rumi started his journey, he was learning knowledge and intellect at the state of, yeah, I know what God is. I read it in a book. I know what God wants. I read somebody saying, here's his commandments. Here's what he said you must do. Here's how he said you must live your life. But to know something on an intellectual level is different from living it and breathing it and being it. So in one way you can kind of read what the moon is like and what it's like to live in space and have that weightless feeling and other people's idea of that. But if ever one day you find yourself being on the moon and actually experiencing that, it can be a totally different feeling. Or if you can imagine maybe something that some people have experienced here on earth is maybe you were born deaf, and then you can read, and you read about what music is, or what sound is, or voice, or language as it is spoken. But then you get a hearing aid and you're able to actually experience music, and listen to language and voices and communicate that way. It's a whole nother story. Is the experience that one must have. And so that to know God is not to read about it in a book, but it's a state of being in your heart. And so to explain what it means to be at the place where the dead fish become alive, it's the 1C represents where the humans basically live in their physical life. It's the sea of human body where you are basically asleep. You are unknowing of what you are. You think you're just this physical body, and maybe you have intellectual knowledge that you carry with you. Then the other sea is the divine sea, and what you don't realize is that the divine sea is all around you. So the place where the two seas meets is the place where your knowledge that you have of your body and meets the divine, and that's when you truly awaken and become alive. That is the place where the two seas meet. So when I'm hearing his first verse, he's in that human sea, he's in that human state of mind, and he's kind of searching to unveil, as I said, the purpose of the mystic religion is to unveil the truth, is that we are all in the divine sea. And so he's kind of searching for it, and he knows his soul is from there, and he's intending to find it while he's whirling around, spinning in that circle. So then he goes on the second verse and says, "This drunkenness began in some other tavern. When I get back around to that place, I'll be completely sober. Meanwhile, I'm like a bird from another continent, sitting in this aviary. The day is coming when I fly off." So the tavern is another metaphor for the seas. So when you are in the tavern, you are in the human sea of sleeping. But some point comes in your sleep where you have a memory of elsewhere and a longing for the source. And that is when you, as a drunk, because you're drunk because you're not fully conscious or aware, you must set off from your tavern and begin your way and your journey home to the source. And when you come back to the source, you're sober, which means you are awakened to the truth, and you are in the divine sea. So in this thing, he's not only using the tavern, but he is also talking about like being a bird, and that he is sitting in this aviary. So now he's using he is a bird, and he's kind of trapped in this cage, which is his body. But then one day, the divine part of himself is going to fly off and become one with the source. So then he has that knowledge now, and then he thinks to himself, who looks out with my eyes? What is the soul? I cannot stop asking. Who in my ear, who hears my voice, who says words with my mouth? If I could taste one sip of an answer, I could break out of this prison for drunks. Because you have such a limited perception that you cannot truly know when you're in this insignificant small body, the entirety of the sea, of the divine. And that's why he's like, but if only I can have a sip. I just want a sip, and maybe that will bring me closer to unveiling my true nature. And then he asks God for help. I didn't come here of my own accord, and I can't leave that way. Whoever brought me here will have to take me home. In the final verse he says, this poetry, I never know what I'm going to say. I don't plan it. When I'm outside the saying of it, I get very quiet and rarely speak at all. So I chose this poem to represent Rumi's work because I feel like it highlights how he produced his work, is that, he got into a meditative trance and he wasn't thinking into it. He was meditating with that ritual of putting the spinning. I call it a meditation. I know some people refer to it as dance, but when you see them doing it, it's more like a meditation or a trance with the one hand up towards the heaven and the one going towards the earth. It's like he's channeling this message from that place where the two seas meet, from that place where the dead fish become alive, the dead fish being that state of being unaware of who you are as a human, and to become alive, which is to become into the knowing of the truth, which is that you are at oneness with the. And when you are at oneness, the Sophies believe that what that means, it's basically that's when you are experiencing what is reality. Every day when you do these practices of prayer and meditation and dance, it's the two seas coming together and crashing their waves together. And sometimes the tide is low and they pull back from each other, and you are just completely human within your human body, having a human experience. But then when the tide is high and you're doing the practices, the waves of the divine can have contact with you, and then you can experience your unity and to know what your purpose is, and basically to have an experience that is based in reality or the truth. I feel like there are many people who believe that they don't believe in, a specific religion, or perhaps they don't believe that there is a purpose to life at all, that we're just molecules bouncing off of each other, and that there is no rhyme or reason to why things are. And if you're someone who thinks like that, like I said, that's completely fine. So, but then maybe Rumi's poetry won't really speak or resonate with you. But if you are someone, no matter what your religious affiliation is, that believes there even is a point and there's a reason for you being here at this moment, at this time, then I find that you will find some solace and understanding in the works of Rumi. Concepts are kind of esoteric, and I am by no means an expert in the mystic religion of Sufism, but I truly hope that I did it some justice here. And thank you so much for listening.